enlighten the eyes of our mind, so that we can see what His whole cause holds for us.
Alleluia, 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 Alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus began to make it clear to his disciples that he was destined to go to Jerusalem and suffer grievously at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes, to be put to death and to be raised up on the third day. Then, taking him aside, Peter started to remonstrate with him. "Heaven preserve you, Lord," he said, "this must not happen to you." But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are an obstacle in my path, because the way you think is not God's way, but man's." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone wants to be a follower of mine, let him renounce himself and take up his cross and follow me. For anyone who wants to save his life will lose it, but anyone who loses his life for my sake will find it. What then will a man gain if he wins the whole world and ruins his life? Or what is a man to offer in exchange for his life? For the Son of Man is going to come in glory, in the glory of his Father, with his angels, and when he does, he will reward each one according to his behavior." The Gospel of the Lord. Confession to make when I was a wee boy at primary school. Oh, and this is an aside. Someone said to me the other week, "When you were at primary school, had they brought in school uniforms yet?" Yeah, and we had slates and chalk as well. But one thing I hated in primary school was homework. I thought it was a travesty of justice. I mean, I had to spend from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock at school every day, and they want me to do more at home. And I just want to play and have fun and kind of do things that I want to do. And I have to say, every now and again, I managed to slip by my mum and dad that I had homework. You know, they would say, "Have you got homework to do?" "Not tonight." The teacher never gave me homework tonight. And now that was fine till the next morning, and you're going to school and you're thinking, "What am I going to say to the teacher? I've got a problem here." And I was kind of looking up some good excuses of what people said, their children said to their teacher. And here's the first one. "My mum did it wrong, so I threw out the homework out the bus window." And the next one, "Sorry, I can't today. My sister's friend's mother's grandpa's brother's grandson uncle's fish died. And yes, it was tragic." And here's the one that I like best. "I leave homework to the last day because I'll be older and therefore wiser." I wish I had thought of that. But the reason I'm talking about homework is, if you remember last week, unusually for me, my homily was one sentence long. And it was, "Here is your homework for the week." Now, I'm not going to embarrass you by asking you, first of all, do you remember what the homework was? Or did you do it? But the homework was really to explore this question: who do you say I am? And that was in the gospel last week. Jesus says to his disciples, "But who do you say I am?" You know, this is a powerful question. And I don't think most of us get how powerful it is. We should take our time in answering this question. Because, believe it or not, this is the most important question that you need to answer for yourself. Now, if you remember back to last week's gospel, and I'm not just preaching about last week's gospel because I missed out on preaching it last week. It is actually the start of the gospel that we read today. It's a continuation. It's one part. All these things happened at the same time. But if you remember, this took place, we're told by Matthew, in a place called Caesarea Philippi. Now, Matthew's not just telling us the geography of where Jesus was. He's telling us something about the backdrop of the society at that time. Because Caesarea Philippi was a place where there were many temples to the Roman and the Greek deities. Many different temples, many different supposed gods. And it's there, among all these gods, that Jesus asks the question. He says, "Who do people say I am?" And then he says to his disciples and to you and me, "But you, who do you say I am?" So Jesus asks this question among all these deities. And we need to explore the question. And that was the backdrop of Jesus' society. All these competing gods, and Jesus was in among all that, establishing himself as the Son of the one true God. But that was the backdrop then. That's not the backdrop today. We have a different backdrop, and it's a new backdrop. But if we want to bring up our children and our grandchildren, if we want to be a parish that evangelizes a broken world, then we need to understand the backdrop, the context in which we are working. A Professor Christian Smith, who is a sociologist who has a chair of theology at Notre Dame University, my old university, he does studies about religion and society and how religion fits in and into society. So Paul is talking about that in today's second reading. He says, don't be led by the world. But this professor, he did in 2000 and 2001, he did a survey of 3,000 teenagers. And basically what he said was, what do you believe about God? That was his question to all these teenagers. What do you believe about God? And when he got all the responses back in, he really kind of summarized it. And he said there's three main things that these teenagers believe about God. First of all, there is a God. That might surprise you. But most teenagers that I know say there is a God. Secondly, he wants us to be happy. And thirdly, he wants us to be nice. He wants us to live good lives. Now, I think probably most of us can buy into that. There is a God. He wants us to be happy. And he wants us to live well. But this Professor Smith summed it up like this. He says, God is a cosmic therapist He's ready to help us when he's needed. That is the prevalent view among most people who call themselves Christian. God exists, but he doesn't make any demands on me. He's just a nice God. And he's there. If I need him, he's there. I can go to him. He wants me to be happy, and he wants me to live a good life. But I decide what makes me happy and what's good. You know, you can litmus test this in our society. If you ask most people out there, what is living a good life? The answer that you'll get back is basically you can do what you like so long as you don't hurt anybody. You know, this isn't real. You know, this notion of that God exists, but he's only there when I need him, that I can decide what I need to be happy and what I need to do to live a good life. It's a dead end. It's not the God we believe in. You know, I've heard it described as basically practical atheism. There's a difference between a true atheist and a practical atheist. A true atheist really studies and explores the question about God. They do the research and they come to a conclusion. In the atheist case, it's that there is no God. And in a sense, that's honest. It's an honest research. Practical atheism is, I call myself Christian, but I live my life as if there was no God. You know, I'm a Christian, but on my terms. And we need to worry about that. C.S. Lewis once wrote, Christ either deceived mankind by a conscious fraud, or he himself was deluded and self-deceived, or he was divine. So basically what he's saying is Christ claiming to be the Son of God was either bad, mad, or it's true. And we only have two choices there. Either he's not the Son of God, he's not the divine revelation of God, or he is the divine revelation of God. Those are the only choices that we can make. And we don't like making that choice. We don't want to reject him, but if he is divine, we kind of don't want to make him the Lord of our lives. We want to be kind of in the middle somewhere. We don't want to reject him, but we don't want him to be the center of our being. That's practical atheism. You know, because what we see in the scriptures is that the God that we believe in does make demands of us. And the reason that he makes demands of us is he wants us to have life. He doesn't want us to live superficial lives. He wants us to have life and have it to the full. And he knows that the only way that we can do that is if we make him the Lord of our lives. So that what he says goes even when we don't like it. And we see that over these past 2 weeks in the gospel. Peter, you are the Christ. He says what he believes. But then today when Jesus starts talking about the cross, Peter takes him aside and basically says to him, this is not what I want in my Christ. I want a different kind of Christ. I don't want a Christ that dies and suffers. I don't want that. And just notice what Jesus does. You know, if you think Jesus is a soft touch, listen to what he says. Get behind me, Satan. You're an obstacle in my path. You know, last week we heard that that Jesus was saying to Peter, you're a rock, and on you I'm going to build my church. Today he's calling him Satan, an obstacle in my path. You know, Peter hasn't come to understand who Jesus really is yet. He will, but at this point he doesn't. And so we can be relieved a wee bit that, you know, when we don't really understand that this is the Lord of my life, we're in good company. But like Peter, we need to grow. And so I pose this to you today. What would happen in your life if you fully believed? If you really made him become Lord of your life? If you centered your entire life round him and what he says goes? What would your life look like? But let me give you a health warning. If you decide to make the Lord the center of your life, it will be the most difficult thing you do, because he will make demands of you. He says it in the gospel today. If you want to be a follower of mine, how do you do that? You take up your cross and follow. To put Jesus at the center of your life will make a demand on you. It will demand everything from you. That's the health warning. But the reward is he promises you life. He promises you a happiness that you can barely imagine. And I want you to think about this, either during Mass or maybe when you come forward, if you're coming forward to communion, just to think about this. The Lord is always pursuing you. He's never abandoning you. He's never letting you go. He's always seeking you. Jeremiah says that in the first reading today. He says, you've seduced me, Lord. It's Jeremiah, I've just been seduced. It's almost like I didn't want to love you, but I can't help but loving you because you've seduced me. And then Jeremiah goes on to say, and because of that, my life is so difficult. But I know that you're here. So the Lord is wanting to seduce you because he wants what is best for you. So we have to explore the question for ourselves. Who do you say I am? Of Mass, welcome to all those who are visiting us today, but a very warm welcome to Oleg, our Ukrainian friend who is back with us, back home from home. Oleg, it's good to see you again. Well done, Oleg. On Wednesday, we start our latest session of Alpha. Could I invite Gemma to come up, please? Welcome, Gemma. Everybody, a big hand for Gemma. Come on over.
Okay, we're doing an interview thing, okay.
Courage to be here. Gemma, introduce yourself for those that don't know you.
Okay, I don't think there's many people that don't know me, but I'm Gemma. You might know me from a while back as sitting up here with an elbow on, but yeah, laterally as working with the kids' church.
Thanks, Gemma. Gemma, where Alpha's coming up, and just kind of tell everyone, why you're an Alpha graduate, you've done Alpha.
Yep.
Why did you do Alpha?
So I did Alpha. I was changing careers. So about 2 years ago, I was in the process of changing careers. I was going back to university to do my postgrad in primary teaching, and I knew that part of that would be to teach in Catholic schools, but I wasn't feeling hugely confident about whether or not I was in a position to take on that role as a Catholic school teacher. And the timing was just perfect in terms of making my applications, and I thought it would give me a bit of confidence. I think as I moved through Alpha, I realised that probably even more so, it was about me evaluating my own faith.
Okay.
It was about me deciding or kind of working out how much of what I'd done in terms of my faith was kind of habit, going through the motions, or was I doing it purposefully? Was I only being a Catholic on a Sunday, or was I genuinely kind of representing the faith every day of the week as I would have to do as a Catholic teacher?
Great, Gemma. Fantastic. And what was the actual course like? Was it hard work, or was it?
Oh, really, really hard work. No, I'm only joking. I was apprehensive. I was apprehensive about taking on something that was kind of 10 weeks long, particularly because it was about confidence. It was, am I going to go in and make a fool of myself? Am I going to ask silly questions? I think particularly as a grown-up, I don't know if I am a grown-up, but the older you get, the harder it is to ask questions in any context. But I think in this context where you feel as if you should know what you're doing, it can be really, really challenging. But it absolutely wasn't that. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't like a burden. You could honestly have. I didn't make it to all of the sessions, and they were very, very understanding about that. I actually used to phone in from home. I did it all online because I have young children, and childcare was a bit of an issue. So I would do some of the courses from home, from my kitchen, and sometimes laterally I did actually come up and do it in person, just because at that point I was really, really keen to be in the same room as everybody, because it was such a supportive environment. It was, even the people that were kind of helping facilitate it were asking questions of themselves in the same ways they were asking questions of us. And it was just a really, really lovely experience where you got to, there was a bit of learning, there was a bit of kind of history, there was a bit of theology, and then there was a lot of just chatting to people about talking about your life experiences. It was very cathartic. It was almost like therapy.
And we didn't charge you.
And you did. It was all for free, yes.
So Gemma, thanks for that. You've done Alpha now.
Yeah.
How has that changed your life?
I mean, the very obvious thing is how much more comfortable I felt kind of engaging in church life. I simply know more people. I've been able to put faces to names to the church community. I think I feel more present when I'm here. I feel as if I'm understanding, or I'm certainly listening more. I'm making those connections. I've obviously volunteered and help out at Kids Church now. Was helping out yesterday, and just feeling more like part of the church instead of just kind of turning up every week and sneaking around to my seat and leaving at the end of the day. I think in day-to-day life as well, I mean, I've got children and they ask tricky questions, and I just feel as if I've got the language now and the confidence to answer those questions, or if I can't answer the questions, I know lots of faces to come here and ask the questions to. And the same in school. I've been able to make my faith part of my language, and I didn't always feel comfortable doing that. It was quite alien. I didn't see much of me. I didn't see people like me kind of being confident with their faith. And through that, I've realised that I don't necessarily need to see people that are like me, because we are just a community, and there's ageless. And yeah.
Gemma, and who thought that being a disciple would mean that you'd spend your Saturday painting faces of children?
Who would have thought it? I know, who would have thought? A skill that I didn't know I have, and I'm sure will be utilised in the future.
Gemma, thanks very much
Thank
for
you
that.
so much.